Hi guys, bit of new material. I'm not getting big chunks of time out here at the moment, tending to pick away at things, and I've been making a rather very basic holder for an old Dremel to try and set up something to give me a facility for toolpost grinding, albeit very primitive. I got some problems getting that really sorted out, but I think it may work. I've got a few things to show you. I'll try and be fairly quick on it because the intros get a bit long. But I've had 3 lots of gifts. I don't get gifts very often. When I do, I'm very appreciative, and I guess I accept them very gracefully. So I'll just run through those real quick, and then we'll get on with the rather tedious and event-ridden work doing the toolpost grinder, if that's the right name for it. Anyway, quite a lot of you will have seen Randy Richards' recent videos talking about his scriber, how he makes it, which is brilliant, the way he's got the turret set up on the lathe. Brilliant. Anyway, I have one of these. Randy sent it to me as a birthday present, which was very good of him. Beautiful piece of work. It really is amazing. It's even engraved, serial number. I showed this to my wife. She said, "Oh, isn't that gorgeous?" I said, "Yes, it is." It's one of those things that's nice to possess, just the joy of possession as well as usage. So thank you, Randy. He said he got rid of the first 20 in about, what was it, 12 hours, I think he said. And he's also sent me some inserts. These are huge, DPMG I think, no, DNMG. They're large. They got radius on the corners, otherwise fairly square geometry. Bit big for me, but I will find a way of using them. And he sent me 3C collets. Thank you, Randy. Now the next thing, I had a visit a week ago from Terry Gift. He's one of my viewers. He drove 2.5 hours all the way over to see me, which in itself was very good of him. We had a brilliant 3 hours chewing the fat, and he brought me some gifts. So it was gifts from Gift. He made this right angle indicator holder specially for me. He also gave me a new indicator and another tool holder, which is it's a 102 XL, which takes 5/8, which is brilliant. I can't get enough of those. Marvellous. Oh, and the indicator, by the way, it's a Shaw's, but it's 5/10 graduations. Very nice. I think I did use that when I was setting up in the forge yaw. You might see that later. So Terry, thank you very much. Great to see you. And the other thing, another viewer, David Calabretta, he's also in PA, as Terry is. Look at this, about 45 end mills. He must have had a monstrous clear out. He said, well, you know, most of them need sharpening, which is fine. It means I must get on with my acute sharpening system by fair means or foul. Looking at these, some are definitely totally dull. Others are in that sort of mid-range where they would probably give some service, and there are a few others which seem to be basically new. It's a hell of a selection. Absolutely wonderful. Mostly 2 flute, which I was trying to get hold of. There's it's a roughing 3/8 by the look of it, and that looks in good shape. So absolutely brilliant. David, you're a star. Thank you, sir, for sending all these. I just hope I get my sharpening system done. Alright guys, that's enough waffle. Thank you to my friends who have sent stuff, and let's move on to the video itself. Okay. Let's try and explain what I'm up to this time. Alright, I mentioned earlier, I think, about wanting to make a very simple little grinder to work on the lathe. On the odd occasion I might need it. This is my Dremel. It's an old model. Must have had this 12 years at least, probably more. The new one is grey, slightly different shape. It also has a useful hollow somewhere which would be useful for registering it. But I think what I'm dreaming up here is it's a piece of 5/8 by half, and I want this to be as close to the toolpost as possible, otherwise I won't be able to go back very far. And if I can get the right, I've got to turn it, otherwise the brush housing's in the way. From the centre to here is nominally 1 inch. I was going to try and find a piece of round which would have to have been 2 inch, and I haven't got any. So what we're going to do is to work on the piece in the chuck, which I'll come to in a moment, and we'll weld that onto here with the thread in it I've got to make, and see where we go. That means that my centre pop on here I've used for centering is not dead on centre to the piece. This is a funny shaped piece. It's not quite 1.5 inches that way. It's I can't even remember the other way. So the centre pop is 1 inch from one end, which I've marked. This end is marked, if it even shows, because when I checked it, I've cleaned this up on the belt sander. It's as good as it's going to get. This is not a precision job in the literal sense. And let me see if I can rotate this a little bit, just a smidge. It still doesn't really show the face of that very well, does it? Oh, it does, I suppose, a little bit. Anyway, if I shade, yeah, see that indicator? We're good to about 4/10, I would say. And this is the new holder and indicator that Terry Gift gave me very kindly. And that's nice. There's a 5/10 graduations. Quite pleased with that. And this isn't super critical here, as I said. How often do I say that? I'm a rough and ready old bugger, and I now and again I go for tight tolerance, but very often it's the simple approach. So let's get zoomed in a bit, and we'll try and get on with boring this and see what we can do with threading it. I'll just pop a centre drill in here and get it started, then we'll put some larger stuff through. I could have used a spot drill for that, but I was too lazy to set it up, seeing as the other one was handy. Now I'm going to whip through with something small. I think we'll use a 1/4 Now, fortunately, because I was thinking here, I was going to have to. Oh, you get my hand in the way. I was thinking that I was going to have to. Come on, you stupid turd. Sorry, that's the chuck. Oh dear. Yeah, having measured the as close as I can, the inner diameter, small diameter on the thread, comes out about 640, which happens to be 4164. And by sheer chance, although I haven't got a lot of big drills, I've got a real old 4164, which I'm hoping might do the trick. Have to see. Let's try and get a quarter through first anyway. Let's get that out. I don't know whether to go straight through with the other drill, which if I do, I think, let's make sure I got enough. Yeah, I'm just looking at the chuck jaws to make sure I can get through there, having set them the way I have. Well, dipstick here is hurrying too much as usual. A bit short of time this end of today, which is evening. And I looked across the available space between these chuck jaws, and it wasn't going to be enough. So I got a piece of quarter there. So I'm going to have to slacken slightly. Stupid old man. Oh dear. Does anybody else do this? I think, as my dear mother used to say, there you are, like a bull at a gate. Yes. Think it through, dude, think it through. Might be a good idea. Anyway, I think this piece of quarter should hold just enough. I'll try and get back on centre again. Oh, that's miles out. Miles out. Let's see now. Having taken all the trouble earlier to get set up, and then I go and make a mess of it. Alright, it's just a smidgen. We're getting closer here. I don't know whether the dial gauge is showing. A bit off there. Let's see. Just tighten this a smidgen more. Check the others. That's all right. Well, considering that piece of quarter is not totally tight fit. It was rotating, so we'll go with that. Hopefully we're in focus. I've just made a start with this, but everything is far from rigid. Wasn't a very pretty beginning. I got into the back gear too. Well, that wasn't very pretty, was it? The drill doesn't have too bad of a grind on it, even though it's covered in rust. But it made a bad start. I think it's through there, we're through alright. So it's a slightly oversized hole. In this case, it doesn't matter much. As long as I can get a thread in there. I'll measure it in a minute and see how big oversized it's gone. Well, the hole isn't actually much undersized at all. Maybe a thou or so, but the problem is that it wandered. So I'm just going to take a couple of thou off with a boring bar. Again, it's not totally important, but we'll just to clean it up. I think let's take another thou. That big old drill didn't do very well. To be honest, drilling a hole that size, I prefer to use a stub drill, but I'm very short of decent sized drills, particularly the 64th series. Just take one more pass through there. Oh my. Well, it's better than it was. The problem now is to cut a thread. My internal threading tool is just a little bit too big, I think. I'm just got to see if it'll fit, but I don't think it will. It might. It's a little bit critical. So I think I'm going to grind a little off the bottom of that for clearance. Just going to check here. I've I've just taken a quick scratch pass, and I'm on B12. Sounds like a vitamin, doesn't it? Yeah, right. Now what I'm going to do here is not convention. I'm going to take direct cuts in. I'm not resetting the compound because I probably would be a bit close to the chuck, I suspect. So what I've got here is, that's 2 thou on the dial. Now if I go 100 plus, just slightly over 100, that takes me to my cross slide stop, so I can come back and then dial in the next setting. So I'm going to set it 6 here and see what we get. As I say so often, this is down and dirty. So look, yeah, we're getting a bit of cut. I've got quite a long way to go. Let's take a heavier cut this time. make some progress. Yeah, starting to get a cut. So I'm going to carry on, get a bit further down on it. Well, this is really rough and ready. Excuse me. This tool I've got in here now, you see the weird angle, and it's got to be cranked because I think I used this on another job. It's very crude. It's a sort of thread cutting, but it's extremely crude and there's not enough left to really regrind it. And that's approximate for truth. But this one, although I did grind a little bit of extra relief underneath, I think it was starting to bind. I was taking a cut and nothing much was happening. So I'm going to have to use this silly little thing. Just do it in small steps, otherwise to be a bit flexible. So it's not going very well, is it, at the moment, but I think we'll get a result eventually. Well, that was a bundle of fun. That stupid little tool, I must make a new small threading tool, but this one was just silly. I could take such tiny cuts, it was ridiculous. So you get this little bugger in here. That does up. It's slightly tight, but being plastic, it feels good. So what we have to do now, we can actually disengage all the lead screw and stuff, is just to put a chamfer on there. Where did this come from? I don't know. Oh dear. There we are, just ran that in just a touch. So I think I'm finished with that piece in the lathe. Not the prettiest of, of threads. In fact, it was a total cheat. Absolute cheat. It's the right pitch and that's probably about all. Well. I should probably be ashamed to put this up as a video, but anyway, gives you all a chuckle, doesn't it, when the old man's messing about and being unconventional. Alright, we'll take that out. He didn't have to thread quite all the way through, of course, but we did. So here we go. Let's take the bugger out. Oh, it's my phone. That's probably my dear son with some bit of interest. Right, I'll clean this piece up and get rid of all the mess. I could actually have given that another 1/16, but I think there's enough clearance just about to get this in and out. And then we'll have to set this up pretty critically. Probably get a weld top and bottom. And that is almost, I'm just going to eye it up, it's almost on centre. I've got a bit more adjustment on here. And just eyeing it up, it's close to centre, so we've got to make that pretty accurate when we get to it, and cut this off back here, and probably work out a way to put a piece of packing and a zip tie or something, unless I can come up with something a bit, oh I don't know, a hose clamp and a piece of packing. it's going to be pretty basic, I tell you, and it probably won't get used much, but it's just something to have available. You know what, doing things on the fly isn't always the best. I hadn't really made much of a plan for this. It's one of those things that happens. But I wanted to make a slightly bigger clearance this side, which is the, shall we say, the chuck side of the Dremel. At the same time, I could set this up in the mill and shave some off. It doesn't really need to be that thick. But what I've done here is I've got this piece of rod, and I machined that to. Let me just. Sorry about that. I've got to put the indicator away. Yeah, I machined that to a fairly tight tolerance piece of scrap, and use that for recentering. So what I'm going to do, and really my method is changing all the time with regards to what I'm doing here, but I'm going to try this. I could always still machine a bit off that. It's just to have a bit more space in here to get at the chuck or collet lock. So I'm going to set this up and take a few cuts, very arbitrary. Now I've taken a few cuts, I'm going to expand out a fair bit more. As I say, totally arbitrary. I don't like these little boring bars, but for a small hole they're quite useful. So I'm going to take that down. I'm probably going to bring it out about another 100th thou or so. Just take a light finishing cut here, very light. Don't get a very good finish with these little boring bars. Now I think I'm still in two minds as to whether to mill some of this off this side. Of course, being fairly thick, it gives me a nice thickness for the weld. If this old man's shaky hands can deal with it, it gets worse every year. Interesting point here I might make mention of. One of my viewers' comments was mentioning about turning a spindle by hand when chamfering, and here with this bar to put a bit of chamfer on here, which may be a waste of time yet. If I engage the cut and turn the spindle by hand, you can get a cut and pretty much avoid any chatter. Just a small point there. He mentioned it as a suggestion, which was good, but in fact, as I told him, I've already done that quite a few times, just to turn by hand to get that chatter-free cut. Right, I think this can come out of the forge jaw now, but I haven't decided yet whether to take any meat off. I may leave it like that. You never know, everything changes. Well, I'm getting set up to try and weld this. I want to get some tacks, both sides, in fact probably one at the front. What I want to do is try and stop it from twisting out of square. I have to be careful with that. Once I've got 4 tacks on, I should be right. I'm also going to preheat it. Now I've got a lamp there, that may be a problem, so I may not video all of it, plus trying to get steady enough hands. So I'm going to preheat and try and get some tacks. Well, sort of got a result. It's not overly pretty. Bit of cutaway on the corner there. More material than needed. I was running at full current on the foot pedal most of the time. Took a while to get a decent puddle. So it's not pretty. I didn't expect it would be, but here we are. I've got it set up now, so I can screw that in. I've got a little bevel on the end here just as a precaution for clearance. It's just there, it was a bit tight, but we're okay. And then having opened up let's get in a bit. I've just used the focus lock. That bit on the front, I didn't even V it out. I just added a bit of material, so it's ugly. But this extra clearance here just gives easier access for the either the chuck or collet holder. I'm going to put that in the Toolpost and see how it looks. Well, that's just about it. Got to come up slightly to get on centre, which is not terribly important at the moment. Just bring that up slightly. That's virtually on centre. The other thing that I need to do, 2 things actually. Need to get some decent abrasive wheels. This one's a load of crap. Also the bearing's got a bit of slop in it, which may be a nuisance. I'll have to see. But the other thing that does need doing is in here, this space, that I need to make a shim, and then we'll have a hose clamp, because at the moment there's a little bit of movement up front. Of course, plastic thread into steel is flexibility, so I need a shim which is probably about 1/8, something like that, so we can fill that space and hose clip around there. It may or may not be adequate, but it was worth a try. I look forward to getting some decent abrasives. Test it properly. Well, there we go. It's another one bites the dust. I think it'll go into the lash up category, and I don't know whether things will be rigid enough until I get the Dremel clamped down better. The front bearing's got some wear, which may be a problem. Whether I can improve that, I'm not sure. That's something else to look at. So it's just one of those things. I thought, well, have something that would give me a bit of grinding ability from the Toolpost. Can't believe it's going to be used very much, but a couple of times in the past I've wanted something, and although it's basic, it might be better than nothing at all. I also did it in a lot of little bits, so I don't know whether the continuity's alright or not. And the threading operation was extremely, I'm trying to think of the right word for that, basic, shall we say, using that crappy little threading tool. So the whole thing really didn't go all that well, but the ideas hopefully okay, we'll see what happens. I haven't started on any particularly larger projects of late because I'm not able to be out here for a long enough spell at once. So there's some other small things which I might try and get wrapped up. So that's it for now, alright? And I hope to see you before too long. Thanks for watching.